After LeBron James left Cleveland in 2018, the Cavs were left with nothing but draft picks and bad contracts. For most franchises, it would have took a very long time to recover, but for Cleveland, they were able to complete one of the fastest rebuilds in NBA history, and not only that, they are building a dynasty. What's up everyone? Today I am once again going to be talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm back on the grind, and I know I've made a lot of videos about the Cleveland Cavaliers recently, but I'm going to continue that. I want to build up my channel based on this team, and as I start to grow, I'm going to branch out and of course make videos about other teams. But again, Cleveland is where it all started, and I am beyond excited for what they're going to do this season. So I would encourage you guys to put all your thoughts on these videos in the comments below. Even if you don't agree with some things, I would love for you guys to debate, and I will even respond. So if you do enjoy this video, even if you're not a Cavs fan, I would really appreciate your support. It only takes 5 seconds to like and subscribe to help grow my channel and get it pushed out to more people, plus you can always change your mind. So I have already made a video on how the Cavs rebuilt their entire roster from when LeBron left, but in this one, I am going to go into much more depth and talk about the future of the current team. So starting off, in the beginning of this rebuild, we all know LeBron was gone, and the Cavs pretty much got rid of all the staff and players and wanted a fresh start. The only people left on the team were Tristan Thompson, Kevin Love because he signed a new contract extension that was too big to trade, and they also had a few other guys like Delly, JR, and Clarkson. The Cavs knew the only way they would be able to turn their future around is if they hit big on some draft picks. It started off in the 2018 draft where Collin Sexton fell into their laps with the 8th pick. He was a gritty player that was always in the gym working, and everyone knew about his famous 3-on-5 game at Alabama vs Minnesota where he caught fire and nearly brought his team to victory pretty much by himself. Anyways, now the Cavs had Collin Sexton and a bunch of older guys that were towards the end of their career, and it didn't fit well with the new direction. So it's pretty self-explanatory why the Cavs weren't predicted to win a lot of games that season, but they really showed the NBA how bad they were, only winning 19 games in their first season of the official post-LeBron era. Luckily for Cleveland, during this season they were able to trade away some players for assets, and they were able to land the 5th pick in the lottery along with a few others. Also in this season, head coach and champion Tyronn Lue was let go because the Cavs were serious about their fresh start. Then with the 5th pick in the 2019 NBA draft, the Cavs took a big chance on a guard out of Vanderbilt named Darius Garland. This pick of course was heavily criticized by fans and the media because it made no sense why the Cavs would draft another undersized guard when they just drafted Sexton. Plus, nobody really knew who Garland was because he was only able to play 5 games at Vanderbilt before his season-ending injury. But for the Cavs front office, this pick was easy because he was the best player available, and they saw the shiftiness and three-point shooting he had and could develop. But they knew this pick was an experiment and could easily backfire, but they also knew it could produce the backcourt of the future. The Cavs also drafted Dylan Windler, and they took a risk trading up to get Kevin Porter Jr., who was really a top 10 talent in the draft, but he had tons of off-the-court issues that nobody else wanted to deal with. But for Cleveland, it was more of a we have nothing to lose type of pick. So now the roster for the Cavs consisted of many young players like Sexton, Garland, Porter Jr., Osman, Windler, and a few others. It was finally starting to feel like a real rebuild. They also had a few of the older guys that they were still trying to get rid of. The Cavs also decided to take a new route and hire John Beilein as their head coach from Michigan. They thought a college coach may relate to the young players, and they also eventually hired JB Bickerstaff as the assistant coach from the Grizzlies. The Cavs started out the 2019-20 season basically experimenting different lineups and trying different things. Kevin Love was always getting injured or faking injuries as it appeared, but it was all a part of the plan. Garland was showing flashes of what he was capable of, but he had no consistency. And Sexton was a scoring machine, but the Cavs still didn't know if the backcourt could be a realistic long-term plan. Kevin Porter Jr. also looked like the steal of the draft, and he even had me excited about his game. Cleveland, of course, still had a bad record this season. They pretty much shipped off any remaining bets like Jordan Clarkson outside of Kevin Love because his contract, and they even for some reason tried to bring in Andre Drummond the second half of the season, which didn't make much sense to me because they were rebuilding, but they also did basically get him for free. One bright spot for the Cavs during this season was Larry Nance Jr., who was providing great defense to the team, and it was getting noticed league-wide. He was leading the league in steals for a while. This 2020 season, as we all know, was ended short due to the pandemic, but the NBA ended up playing it out in the bubble, but the Cavs weren't invited, so they had a very long offseason. As much as guys like Collin, Sexton wanted to be out there playing, I think this long break was good for the franchise because it gave the front office lots of time to think about and figure out their plans for the future. So now, after all of this was over, the Cavs got the 5th pick again in the draft lottery, where they would take Isaac Okoro, a defensive guard out of Auburn. Now the Cavs had developed a little bit of a core to build around, but they still had Andre Drummond, who picked up his option, so they had to figure out a buyout. And one thing most people forget about is how bad Andre Drummond was for us. He did some decent things, but the one play to me that sums up his career in Cleveland is the one against the Grizzlies, where he randomly dribbled up and threw the ball into the air to himself that was instantly on not top 10. Cleveland started off this next 2021 season pretty solid at 500, but it wasn't for long until they would start tanking again. Then later on, during the deadline, Cleveland of course struck gold in the James Harden trade to the Nets, where they snuck in and received Jarrett Allen. This was a genius move by Koby Altman. Basically how this trade happened is that the Nets wanted to get James Harden from the Rockets to create a big three with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. This meant the Nets knew they wouldn't have the money to pay Jarrett Allen, so they wanted to trade him and get something back. For whatever reason, the Rockets didn't want to pay Allen either, so the Cavs offered to take him for a first-round pick. And it's safe to say that this move has worked out pretty well. Jarrett Allen, unlike Drummond, was a way more athletic center that could finish around the rim and fit into the defense way better. The Cavs still were at the bottom of the league this season, but things were looking uphill after some of the trades and roster moves. But nobody would have expected what was to come next, not even people in the organization. So in the 2021 NBA Draft Lottery, the Cavs finally struck big again and got the 3rd pick in the NBA Draft. It was clear that there was 3 top players in this draft in no apparent order. The Pistons ended up falling in love with Cade Cunningham, and the Rockets never really considered Mobley, so the Cavs were able to get the 7-footer. It turns out pairing together Mobley and Jarrett Allen would create an unstoppable paint protection that was displayed throughout the 2022 season. So now going into last year, the Cavs had an actual starting lineup with no holes outside of speed. They were able to bring over Lauri Markkanen from the Bulls in a sign-and trade, and head coach JB Bickerstaff was willing to take a big risk and try something new, going away from small ball and starting 3 7-footers. We all know the league is really shifting towards small ball and the three-pointer, but I think the Cavs are making teams wonder if that's really the way to go all in on. In my opinion, I think it has to all balance, and Cleveland has that. The Cavs started out last season very hot and they surprised the whole league and had everyone talking. But then unfortunately, the injuries came in and torched the roster, starting with season-ending injuries to Collin, Sexton, and Ricky Rubio. Speaking of Rubio, the Cavs also brought him over in a trade for Taurean Prince. So technically, the first-round pick the Cavs traded to the Rockets got them both Jarrett Allen and Rubio. Koby Altman is such a finesser. Anyways, the Cavs' hot start was the story of the NBA until all those injuries happened. We all know that Cleveland fell to the 8th seed and eventually ended up losing in the play-in tournament, but I know they should have done much more, and they will this upcoming season. I don't know about you, but I really think they're going to be contenders this season, and that's why I labeled them an upcoming Dynasty. That's going to wrap up this video. I am so excited for the grind I'm going to do with this channel, and I hope you guys join me for the ride. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about this video, and also critique what I could do better. Also comment below what you want to see next. Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. If you enjoyed, again make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, I'll see you all later.